Hello, and thanks for joining us. I'm Kevin Nealon. Our top story tonight, it appears congratulations are in order. We are monitoring things closely as details continue to come in, but it seems, yes, I have confirmation. We're talking about you, Joseph. Congratulations. You really outdid yourself this time, which probably wasn't that hard. Our team has discovered footage from one of the many celebrations taking place in your honor. Stay away from drugs, kids. Now for some deeper analysis, let's go live via satellite to our special guest commentator, Other Kevin. Other Kevin, what are your thoughts on all this? Speechless, Kevin. Wow. Just wow. Insightful as always. Thank you. Well, I'm now being told that we are out of time and that I should pull this lever. I'm Kevin Nealon. Thanks for watching. Take care, Jimmy. Thanks, Bob.
Hello, how y'all doing? Hi, Joseph. I hear that you have a show, not famous, and wish you good luck with your show, and I thank you what you're doing for your audience and your people that you're trying to make impression on their life. So good luck with your show, and thank you for all you do. Bye, Joseph.
Am I being overconfident? Am I becoming complacent about complacency?
I think you are.
Oh, he's not the Messiah, he's just a very naughty boy.
Yeah, I've got big ears.
Brian doesn't want to see anyone else. Piss off!
That's the one. Because you literally complete me, and we complete each other.
You've obviously encountered discrimination in your own life by virtue of being Australian. So
Hey, Manuel Kemp was a real pissant who was very rarely stable.
I don't want to get too gushy, but I might just be saying you complete me, Dean. PNG now stands for Pritchard and Good.
Branding is not a bad blind date.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're
How
insane!
did I do that?
You're insane!
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Monday. Happy Monday in this wacky world that we're living in. I am your host, Joseph Jaffe, the not famous Joseph Jaffe. And if it is my wish, it is just every day to just become just a little bit more not famouser. I hope you are well. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. It is January 17th, and we have a great show for you today. I realize it is a happy day, Lubna, a happy day indeed. And I'm looking forward to today's show as well. I realize I'm wearing the red sweater, the same one in the intro video with Mr. Ivan Pollard, which means absolutely nothing other than I better not be wearing it tomorrow and be found out. Now, when I say we have a great show, I mean it. We'll talk about Todd in a moment, but Mr. Brian Clark, Dr. Helen Fisher, and Nathaniel Moore, one of my fellow creator coin holders, the $ Omari coin, will be in the studio Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But today we're focusing on Mr. Todd Cherches. He is the CEO of Big Blue Gumball and author of Visualeadership. It's one word. Why is it one word? He's going to tell us, no doubt, very, very soon. Mr. Bob Farnham says he's looking forward to the show. Todd, by the way, is a fellow adjunct professor at NYU's SPS, School for Professional Studies, where I teach as well. So spreading the NYU SPS love today. And then this Friday, NFT Fridays, we have a pixel. We have an ex-punk. We have Mr. Jeremy Posver, who is one of the founders of the amazing Expansion Punks project. and more on him soon. Now, on Friday, we kicked off NFT Fridays because it was, Friday. And I just want to extend the offer to you. If you'd like to win one of the tremendous Fierce NFTs, all you have to do is 3 things. You have to join Fierce Studios Discord. You have to join my Discord. And if you need a URL, I can help you out. That's what I'm there for. Just go to bit.ly/not-famous Discord, because my Discord is neither famous or not famous, nor am I. I've just got my grammar completely muddled at the moment. And of course, subscribe to the show. And you can do that at bit.ly/subscribe to the show. If you are already subscribed to the show, all you have to do is go into the Discord and just give me your YouTube subscriber name. I'm going to extend this for the week and try and make sure that I send you, one of my regular viewers, a free NFT. And I have a feeling these NFTs are going to be worth a lot, because the community is worth a lot as well. And of course, if you'd like to win some Jaffe coin, or get some Jaffe coin, I don't win Jaffe coin for people that are watching live, all you got to do is put your smartphone, put the camera of your smartphone on that QR code that is flashing up on the top right, and follow the instructions, and you will get some Jaffe coin. It is my way of recognizing and rewarding people that are watching live. And me being the geek that I am, what I love most about the QR code, I'll leave it up for a while, is that it is only live while the show is live. So after 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today, that QR code is no longer live. And it is a way of being able to, as I said, share the power of what I call the streaming era. Glenn is here. Glenn says he's joining from Florida, and he's waiting to hear if he won or not. All shall be revealed, my friend. All shall be revealed. Well, let's get on with the show. And you know what? I'm going to keep up with this idea of riffing and just being able to talk from off the cuff and from the heart. And today is MLK Jr. Day. Today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. It is a day that is a federal holiday. I just wanted to share some thoughts on it. And as always, I will start the handy dandy egg timer now. So I decided to call the seated soliloquy today, Legacy is Not Past Tense, which is funny because we always talk about leaving behind a legacy. And I'm not really sure that we should think about it that way. I think a legacy should be something that is absolutely alive, because it is keeping the spirit of someone who has passed on very much alive. Legacy builds. Legacy is organic. Legacy thrives, if you will, on people being able to pick up the mantle, right? To take up the mantle, to take the ball, to run with it, to take the baton and shift that baton, to keep it moving forward. Now, in many respects, this soliloquy is about MLK Jr., but it's also a thought that I had, which is companies are closed today. Not every company, some companies are closed today. And I was thinking, why? Why are they closed? Why are they not working today? Why are they not bringing their employees in and whether it's virtual these days or in person, and creating a day of programming, a day of content, a day of education, a day of inspiration, a town hall, a guest speaker, the ability to actually celebrate what it is, or the man that he was in this particular case. And it doesn't just apply to this holiday, it applies to every holiday when we honor those that have come before us, those that have fallen, those that have sacrificed, and those whose sacrifice will never be in vain. I don't know if it's a hypocrisy of a corporation just saying, hey, let's turn this into a holiday, but why not dedicate the day to service? Why not dedicate the day to being able to be an active participant as opposed to a silent or a passive observer. I do want to read to you a part of an email that I received. I teach at NYU and also Western Connecticut State University, because I think you can't be active, you can't commit to service, you can't do until you know. Martin Luther King Jr. led the civil rights movement and helped end legal segregation 100 years after the Civil War. He influenced federal laws that ensured people of color could legally enjoy all the rights of the US Constitution, including the right to vote. And his ideas inform the ongoing work of this nation, including the work we do at Western Connecticut State University every day. We've not reached Dr. King's ideals, but we aspire to them. And I rejoice when I talk and work with all of you who embrace his beliefs. This is coming from the president. I will close with some of his words from the I Have a Dream speech, words that resonate today. Now is the time to make real the promise of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality to all of God's children. And now is the time to welcome Todd Cherches, the CEO of Big Blue Gumball and author of Visual Leadership. A little bit of background on Todd. Todd Cherches is the CEO and co-founder of Big Blue Gumball, an innovative New York City-based leadership development and executive coaching firm. A member of Marshall Goldsmith's MG 100 coaches, Todd is a 3-time award-winning adjunct professor of leadership at NYU and a lecturer on leadership at Columbia University. He is also a TEDx speaker. His talk is called The Power of Visual Thinking, and he is the author of the groundbreaking book, Visual Leadership, Leveraging the Power of Visual Thinking in Leadership and in Life, which was published in 2020 by Post Hill Press, Simon & Schuster. I always take my hat off to anyone that launched a book in 2020. So let's welcome him onto the show. Mr. Todd Cherches, fellow adjunct, welcome to the show.
Joseph, thank you so much for having me. I liked your riff on Martin Luther King Jr. And I just wrote a blog post today that's on LinkedIn called Why Martin Luther King Jr. is the king of visual communication. It's his use of alliteration and illusion, his use of rhythm, rhyme and rhythm, poetic use of language that created pictures in our mind's eye, and especially his use of metaphor, which was second to none. So definitely a special day for a special person and a great leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And when we do get into the visual leadership and visual design conversation, I would love for you to expand on that if the moment presents itself. I'm also a big fan of alliteration. I was talking to my friend who was talking, Brian Fanzo, who's one of the correspondents on the show. And I think he was talking about, it was FOMO, FUD, and hype. And FUD stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So it was FOMO, FUD, and hype. I said, no, it should be FOMO, FUD, and frenzy in order to keep it alliteratively, rhythmic, if you will.
And the rule of 3. Things work best in 3, are most memorable in 3s. So definitely.
For sure. Now, today is Ditch New Year's Resolutions Day. So my question to you is, did you make a New Year's resolution? And if so, have you ditched it? If not, today is a good day as any to ditch it.
I have not ditched it. My resolution was just the F word, focus. My resolution for this year is all about being more focused. And back in October, I wrote a blog post called Make Next Month a November, which was all about saying no. So I'm trying to continue that. So I have not given up on it yet. I'm trying to say no to more things, including podcast requests and things like that. But I couldn't say no to you, Joseph. So I'm here with you today.
Well, I am so glad that you actually said yes. And I was thinking, if you said if November coincided with Movember, You could also wear your mustache and say no to podcast requests. Or, Lubna says, it's it's interesting. She says, it's my word of the year to focus. But she also says we should introduce JOMO into the NFT space, which I'm thinking either stands for the joy of missing out or the Joseph of missing out. So it's one of the two. I'm not really sure which one.
I think it's joy, but you don't want to miss out on Joseph. So I think yes, it's whatever works for you.
Yeah, when I make bad jokes, this is ultimately, that's what I was going for. I was going for the humor. But you know what? Sometimes being quick on the trigger finger is never a good thing. Now, let's get in, before we get into the meat and potatoes today. I haven't done this in a while, but I always like to get to know my guest, with a little segment that I call Fun Facts. Now, Todd, we know who you are from a corporate standpoint. You're a muckety muck, you're a CEO, you're an author, you're an adjunct professor, but the adoring crowd want to know a little bit about you. For example, they heard that early in your career, when you lived in LA, you moonlighted as a bouncer in a nightclub for 3 years. And then what happened?
One night, well, I actually applied for a waiter job. I just needed a survival job. And they said, well, we don't need any more waiters, but you're tall. I'm 6'4". And even though I was stick figure thin in those days, they said, if you put on a suit, I think, can you just stand by the door and check IDs? I'm like, yeah, I could do that. And there was a velvet rope. It was like a restaurant, nightclub. And I always say, most people wouldn't guess this, but I'm an extreme introvert. I always say I'm a 3Bs kind of guy, a back of the room, behind the scenes bookworm by nature. So for me to take a job as a door host or a bouncer where you're standing in front and welcoming people was so outside of my comfort zone. But I did it and I actually loved it. I met so many amazing people. But then one night I had to help throw out this drunk guy and he turned around and punched me in the face. My glasses broke into a million pieces. I went down and I said, I think my bouncing career is now over. So that's my bouncing story.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, all these career decisions in your life. I mean, if you'd been wearing contact lenses, you might have been one of the world's most accomplished bouncers. But here's another story, which is, in your pursuit after or before bouncing, you actually were interviewed by Peewee Herman to be his personal assistant. You didn't get the job, but you will always have your half hour with Peewee. That might have also been, in light of recent events, a career limiting decision.
Yeah, so it was a little surreal, but a great experience. And Peewee was my alter ego. He was my annual Halloween costume. So picture me, if you put my face on Peewee, that was my Halloween costume for many, many years. So to actually be interviewed by him one-on-one for a half hour was like one of the surreal. He was a very nice guy. His real name is Paul Rubens. But then every once in a while he would go, ah, like something like that. And it would flip me out. So it was very surreal to be in a job interview. But Peewee Herman is your prospective boss interviewing me for that role. So talk about one of those surreal Hollywood moments. That was one of them.
Well, we have one more little fun fact about you, and you're probably wondering what the hell is he going to do and how is he going to illustrate this time.
I love your visuals, by the way. So amazing job with your visuals.
Well, thank you. This is what happens when you have a shoestring budget of zero. And talking of visual design, clearly I'm visually design challenged. But this is an interesting one. You read the complete works of Shakespeare, all 37 plays, 154 sonnets, and 4 major poems by the time you were 18. And so, of course, we were going to have to, alas, poor Yorick.
Love it. I knew him, Horatio. Yes.
There were many ways to illustrate that, but that's incredible. Like, first of all, why? Second of all, why?
Well, Shakespeare was one of those names that was thrown around for years, and then I forget what grade it was. I think it was like 8th grade or 9th grade. They said, all right, we're gonna do Romeo and Juliet, and the teacher put on a record. We were supposed to follow along in the text, and then she went out to smoke a cigarette. That's how they taught Shakespeare. We had no idea what we were listening to, what we were reading. It was like this foreign language written in code, but there was something about the beauty of the language and the rhythm, and again, the use of metaphor. I didn't understand any of it, but there was something like gripped me. The following year, I had Mr. Patterson for English, and we did Julius Caesar, and he just got me hooked on Shakespeare. And I realized that I had this, for some reason, I started reading, the more I read Shakespeare, the more it read to me like regular English. So I was able to understand not everything, but a lot of what I was reading. And then he basically mentored me and said, wow, you really get this, what we're talking about. And I went on to read Macbeth and Hamlet and King Lear and Twelfth Night, and I just kept going. I had the Riverside Shakespeare. I just went, and in fact, I was such a nerd. This is how nerdy. I would go to the library and take out the albums myself. And my father would be like, what are you listening to? What is this crap? And it was like, I was listening to As You Like It or something. So I just started with one, and I just kept going, and I've knocked out the whole book. And one of the benefits of having OCD growing up was if you were addicted to something that was not unhealthy or destructive, it was actually a good thing. So I got addicted to Shakespeare, and I was compelled to finish the entire works. So that was my claim to fame back then.
There is a method to my madness,
which comes from Shakespeare, by the way, from King Lear.
Well, and of course that was completely intentional, not. In fact, when we had to read Shakespeare, when I was at school, I would go to, at the time, the video store and get the animated full-length feature of it. I struggled with Shakespeare. But I was saying the method to the madness of introducing these fun facts is that there's always an insight, a human insight, a personal insight, a leadership insight. And yours came right there at the end when you spoke about the fact that you had OCD and how you were able to channel addiction, or an addictive, or an addiction, I should say, in a way that, as that was not unhealthy in terms of, producing something that is quite unique and unprecedented. And I think that's a common theme right now, which is being able to embrace, the weakness doesn't have to be turned into a strength. The weakness is the strength. And that's an insight from a previous guest, David Rendell.
That's a great point. It's something that just slipped out. I usually don't talk about it, but growing up, I did have like extreme social anxiety disorder, depression, OCD. There's a book called The Boy Who Couldn't Stop Washing, and I had like 90% of the things on the checklist. So it's something that's why I chose not to do anything. I had the willpower and determination to not to do anything that, if done in excess, would be harmful. So I have never smoked a cigarette. I have never taken drugs of any kind that were non-prescription. I didn't have alcohol until I was 40. I had a glass of wine, and before that, I had never had a beer or a drink. So my main addiction was chocolate. I was a huge chocoholic. I had bags and bags of chocolate in every drawer in my room growing up. So that was my main vice. But yes, there is definitely method in this madness. Thank you, Steve.
Steve Garfield is always keeping me on the straight and narrow as well, and that's very personal to me. What you said, I have a kid who has OCD as well, and hand washing is part of it, to the point where often his hands are red and raw. But you know what, as Lubna says, it's a superpower. And I think we are living in interesting times, Todd, where the community will support everyone that is left out. In fact, I even said today, I was listening to a podcast, and I was thinking, instead of insider trading, we should now introduce a new term called outsider trading. Instead of limiting and capturing and hoarding information and making it only available to a small elite exclusive few, outsider trading is the ability to liberate those insights and that information and those nuggets and Easter eggs, and share it with as many people as possible, especially the outsiders.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, putting things out there into the world, it's and being transparent is a key part of being a leader, right? Effective leaders don't try to hide behind the facade. They bring those full, authentic, vulnerable selves to their leadership. And you need a climate of psychological safety where you feel comfortable being vulnerable. But and again, my addiction to reading continues to this day. I just put out my list of business books. I've been reading an average of one business book a week since 1998. So 23 years, 50 a year is around 1,150 business books. Thank you for putting that up there. And then last year, because of the pandemic and I had more time, I just kept reading and I accidentally doubled that number almost. So I actually read 101 business books last year.
That is unbelievable. And I've just pasted in the comments section that link to the 101 business books that you read in 2021, in case anyone is interested. We know, of course, that there's one business book you did not read. And so I owe you. I need to send Bill to Suck to you to get your critique.
I would love it. I'll add that'll be on my 2022 reading list.
But the book that I need to read is yours, and we're going to talk about that soon enough. Todd, you are a fascinating man to me because you teach HR, and we were chatting in the green room earlier about HR. I was saying that in my book I spoke about the fact that we should ban the word employee, and then you said to me, how do I feel about the term
human resources, right? Like, think about that term. HR is such a common term. Oh, I work in HR, I got to talk to HR, but HR stands for human resources. So it's like humans as opposed to, say, robots. And more robots are coming and taking the jobs of humans, right? But also think about just the word resources and what it feels like, or as a manager, if you think of a human being as a resource as opposed to an individual, a person, or as, quote, talent, then that goes a long way towards how you treat them. And that's why there are so many boss holes out there, which is a word that I coined many years ago and continue to use to this day. And I just wrote about that recently as well.
Not only did you, but I'm teeing it right up. You wrote an article called "No More Working for Jerks."
Well, just to clarify, that was a New York Times article, and I shared it, but I added my commentary about boss holes. So I don't want to take credit for work that I did not do. So I forget the name of the woman who wrote it from New York Times, but that article really went viral. Over 14,000 views already in just the last 5 days. And the word boss hole definitely caught on with people that I added to the conversation.
I just posted as well in the comment section the New York Times article that you're referencing, and I'll post your LinkedIn one as well. So let's dive into that a little bit more. Let's dive into the boss hole. Let's dive into the article, the New York Times article, and then you'll riff on it as well.
Sure. And also, I think I just said girl. I meant to say young woman. That just kind of slipped out. So I just want to correct that because that was inadvertent in my haste of explaining. So I just wanted to clarify that. So language counts. So I just wanted to mention that.
Sure, unless of course she was 10 years old, in which case she's very talented.
She's an incredible writer, and I love that article that she wrote.
So let's expand on it. Let's talk a little bit more about this premise, about the fact that leadership itself has shifted. Let's talk about the fact that right now servant leadership is rising, that the chainsaw Dunlap approach is of the past, but also let's bring it back to the fact that, Todd, when I started working at Ogilvy, we share that in common. HR was my knight in shining armor. Joy Marhoff at Ogilvy, she had my back. She hired me. I would have died for her. I would have killed for her. But I felt that certainly, when you fast forward to the beginning of the 2000s, HR became nothing more than hatchet men and hatchet women. They were not a friend of the talent, of the worker, of the employee anymore. They were just doing the dirty work for the bean counters and the number crunchers. I would love to hear your build on that.
Yeah, I could talk about this for hours. And if you think about it, there was no HR back in the early days of Industrial Revolution, right? There were people who did the hiring and people who did the paperwork and comp and benefits and all these different functions. And then human resources originally was called like personnel, right? And then a lot of times it was handled by the office manager. And then human resources became a field, and the name was changed in a lot of situations to talent, global talent engagement, people. Some companies just call it people.
Right, chief people officer or
Right, right. So, and also one of the questions, like you were just talking about, I'm glad to hear about your experience at Ogilvy, but the question very often is raised, who does HR represent? Do they represent the company or the quote employees, for lack of a better word? And a lot of employees think HR is there for them, but HR is really there to protect the interests of the company. I think that's where there's conflict a lot of times, because employee will go to HR with an issue and it could backfire on you. So we're trying to create a more human and humane and put the word human back into human resources. But this ties into everything going on today with the Great Resignation and the Great Reassessment. And I think people are tired of working for tyrants. And I've had so many bad bosses in my career. I think I hold the Guinness Book of World Records for most horrible bossholes who've ever walked the face of the earth. Now, a big part of it was that I worked in Hollywood and I worked in Wall Street, two industries where the core values are ego, power, control, and money very often. And if you've had very few bosshole managers, you're very, very lucky. But maybe I just had a lot of bad luck with them. But that's why that's actually what drove me into doing what I do today: management, leadership training, teaching, and executive coaching.
It's very funny because I always find a quote for my guests, and this is the quote that I found for you today. I'm thankful for all those difficult people in my life. They have shown me exactly who I do not want to be. Now, there's an interesting spin on this, because according to my research, this was said by L.E. Gator, and I was like, wait a second, L.E. Gator, is that like IP Skew or Rusty Bed Springs? So I think this is L.E. Gator from my research as well. But whether whether L.E. Gator is real or not, there is a real sentiment here, and I will tell you that in my first book, In Life After the 30-Second Spot, I was going to dedicate the book to one of my first bosses, and these were the words, which is I'm dedicating this book to my boss. Everything that you taught me, I did the opposite, and which is why I know I'll be successful. And my publisher refused to let that print. But that was the sentiment sometimes, which is as much as we would love the inspirational leadership, sometimes we can actually triangulate against that.
Yeah, definitely. My book is dedicated first to my wife, secondly to my parents, and third to all the horrible bosses without whom the rest of my career would not have been possible. So luckily my publisher allowed me to put that into my book. Regarding your alligator thing, by the way, just reminded me of that stupid corny dad joke. What's the difference between an alligator and a crocodile? One will see you later, and one will see you in a while. So that's how you find out when they're going to meet you. So that's one of those. So I had to make use of your laugh track at least once. So that's it. I could check that off my list.
What do you mean laugh track? Or I could have given
you. That's the live studio audience. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Yeah.
And the band, right? As I said, we play with the hand that we were dealt at the end of the day.
Yes. That is
so I would love to get into into the basis for. I mean, you're right. We could talk about HR for hours. We could talk about putting the human back into human resources. We can talk about eradicating the term resources. But you have another part of your fascinating life, and this is really this concept of visual design and visual leadership, which of course is connected to the book. You wrote this article as well, which is can you draw what your company does? And I love this. I mean, I just absolutely I've never heard this pitch before. I've never heard someone saying, "Can you draw?" Tell us a little bit about what this means. Why it's important, how it connects back into what you do.
Sure. Well, the central idea behind visual leadership is, how do you get people to see what you're saying? How do you get an idea out of your head? You have an idea in your mind's eye, right? Which is a term coined by Shakespeare in Hamlet when he said, "I think I see my father," and it was the ghost. He didn't know if it was an apparition or a figment of his imagination. So he said, "I see my father in my mind's eye." So we've been using the word or the phrase to see something in your mind's eye for many years. But how do you get that out of your head? So whether it's creating a company or coming up with an idea and you're talking to a client or a student, it doesn't matter who you're talking to. It's all about allowing or enabling other people to see what you're saying. So one of the questions I often ask, a lot of times people say, oh, I know what I'm saying, but I just can't explain it. Well, if you can't explain it, then maybe you don't have the clarity that you think you have. And then how are other people supposed to understand? So this exercise I do with clients where I have them get up at a whiteboard or flip chart or on a napkin or any piece of paper, can you sketch out, and it could be a literal diagram like a process map or a storyboard or a mind map, or it could be a metaphor. And in this particular article, one of my clients said he drew a picture of a whale and eating up all these goldfish and said, we're the whale eating up the competition. And the head of the department said, that's not accurate at all. We're not big. This implies we're bigger than our competitors, which we're not. This implies that we have a bigger market share, which we don't. He said, rather than a whale, it's more like our competitors are sharks because they just want to bite off the business and swim away, leaving you bleeding. And we're like dolphins. We are cuddly and friendly. And, so we had this whole debate about what aquatic mammal or fish they might be, but that whale versus goldfish evolved into a conversation around dolphins versus sharks. And then the dolphin became a metaphor for how we want to treat our customers with love and care and respect and friendliness. And we don't want to be the sharks that the competitors are. But that was the power of using visual thinking and metaphor, because they wouldn't have gotten to that point if we hadn't gone through that drawing exercise. So that's just one of many examples. And I have people draw. How would you explain to your child or to your grandparent what it is that you do and how what you do is different through the power of visual language and or visual imagery?
The idea of visual identity, I've had Chris West on the show talks about verbal identity, and what I see happening is this very interesting coming together of the different senses and recognizing that there is actually some very interesting interplay between the two. Like, can you see what I'm saying? I even started riffing a little bit myself. I riffed with myself, which might be a sign of madness, or that I enjoy my company too much, a little bit too much. But this is what I came up with, which is from elevator pitch to elevator picture.
I like that.
And I thought to myself, wow, that would be really interesting if we could, instead of being able to, talk in 140 characters or 280 characters, or develop that elevator pitch, that we could actually create a diagram that we could almost hand off to someone in the elevator, and they would get it and they would be compelled to want to hit that emergency stop in the elevator and say, tell me more, I'm interested.
Yeah, that elevator picture is like, what is your personal brand? What is your reputation? What is your logo, right? Do you have a logo? How would you represent yourself in such a way? And I talk about in my TED Talk and in my book, the 3 words: attention, comprehension, and retention. We are wired visually as humans. If you're a cave person walking through the jungle and you heard rustling in the brush, what do? You turn around to see what it is, right? So we're wired auditorially, but also visually. And I want to get, without getting into all the brain science, this is the way we are. So it's like, how do you make yourself memorable? And attention, comprehension, retention, when you use visual language or visual imagery, it captures people's attention in a way that words alone don't. It helps people to understand, and it helps people to remember. So that's the power of using visuals. And I could talk for an hour just about the book cover before even going into the book. The rainbow eye represents the fact that just as no one in the world has this color eye, no one in the world sees the world exactly through the same lens that you do. And our job as leaders is to try to, what I call flip the eye, turn it around on ourselves to look inwardly at who we are and how we see the world. But also part of our jobs as leaders is to try to see things with empathy and compassion and understanding, or as Elvis Costello would call it, peace, love, and understanding, and see things through the lens of other people to help them make their vision a reality. So there's all kinds of conversations just about what the rainbow eye represents. Because originally I was going to have a blue eye, because blue is my favorite color, and my company is called Big Blue Gumball, so I wanted some blue color consistency. But then I realized, and I got the feedback, that a blue eye was not inclusive. And then when I saw a visual of this rainbow eye, it's like there was no question about what the cover of this book would be.
No doubt. And I will address the Is it the alligator in the room, or is it the crocodile in the room? Or, by the way, Glenn said he'd never heard that joke before. So that uh, dads unite, dad jokes unite. But this is, Steve. Steve says, "What, why?" I think, why doesn't the title of the book have two L's? That's obviously one of the first things that the eye is drawn to. So, let me take it to the horse's mouth and have you answer.
Sure. Thank you, Steve. Great question. So for a few reasons. First of all, Visual Leadership is my brand. So I actually have a trademark, a service mark for the word Visual Leadership. So that is my official brand. But also, it represents the fact that who you are and how you lead is inseparable from the lens through which you see the world. So as a leader, that's why no two leaders are the same. And that's why you can take twins and you can send them to the same schools and they have the same parents, and yet they're going to see the world from different lenses. So as a leader, there's two ways. Looking backwards, your life experiences, your culture, your upbringing, your education all shape what you see, but also what you don't see and what you miss, what you notice. That's one component. And the other is, when you think about leadership, the word vision comes up all the time. So-and-so is a visionary leader, like a Martin Luther King Jr., like a Steve Jobs, like a Elon Musk or a Branson, right? These are people who have a picture in their mind's eye of an idealized future state that's different from and better than the current reality. And your job as a leader is to help plant that vision in the minds of others, to help them and get them on board with making that vision a reality. So it's backward looking in terms of who you are and how you lead comes from where you came from, but also it's about the future and making your vision a reality. So that's the book's title, represents that all within that single word.
I love it. And, I was thinking to myself, I've never, thought about the fact that when someone says visionary, we're talking about sight, we're talking about seeing, even though vision is never really articulated in terms of a picture, in terms of a drawing, in terms of an image. It's communicated, it's written down, it's read, it's bones as opposed to flesh on the bones.
Exactly.
They call it a visionary, not an auditory. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I have a dream" speech, right? He didn't say I have a business plan, I have an Excel spreadsheet. He said I have a dream, right? What is a dream? It's a vision. It's a picture in your mind from when you're sleeping about a better world, right? So perfect conversation for Martin Luther King Jr.'s day is, are we making his vision? Has this vision become a reality? There's still a long way to go. We've made a lot of progress, but there's still a long way to go to make that dream come true.
Yeah, I don't normally put some of my colorful backgrounds, but I'm doing that today because so many images spring to life. I think there's something else as well, which is, even if I look at my images, this is for I've never really even explained them, but this certainly is the logo. And if you actually want to know what that is, and you look carefully, you can see it's actually an inverse. It's the white space around the actual logos.
Wow.
And really, when it comes down to it, again, if you look very carefully in the Joseph Jaffe is not famous logo, you'll notice a combination of various traditional, non-traditional, terrestrial, streaming logos, an amalgamation of them. And so there is a very visual, there is a story even in a logo that hopefully communicates something, whether it's, I guess, explicitly or even a little bit less, subconsciously.
Yeah. Thoreau said, it's not what you look at, it's what you see, right? So everyone can look at this, but see something completely different or notice different things. So I think that's a big part. My main thing with visual leadership is we already do visual thinking, visual communication. We already do this. We use metaphors, we use imagery, we use PowerPoint slides, most of them very badly. If you say this is on my desk. My wife got me this. This is, this picture of this iceberg, right? This is just, when we say something's just the tip of the iceberg, what does that mean? It represents the fact that what we know or what we see is just a small portion of what else is out there, right? So we use expressions and metaphors like that all the time. But if you become a better visual leader, you start to notice them and you start to use them more creatively and more effectively. because there's a lot of the cliches. So if you want to quote, think outside the box, you first have to have something inside the box, right? So just even that metaphor, and I do a whole thing on models and mental models and frameworks. And what do? They help us to see things more clearly so that we could find solutions and opportunities that maybe we hadn't seen before. So I break it down to 4 categories just to jump ahead. Use of visual imagery and drawing, use of mental models and frameworks, use of metaphor and analogy, and use of storytelling with bonus points for humor if and when appropriate. So those are the 4 categories. So some people may suffer from ICD, which is I can't draw syndrome, right? But if you could play Pictionary with your friends and family or play charades, you have the skills to communicate visually. Right? So don't let that say, oh, I'm not a great artist. It's not a test of your ability to draw. It's a test of your ability to think visually, create pictures in other people's minds so that they can, quote, see what you're saying. So some people like storytelling better. Some people like picking up a pen. But whatever it is, it's all about getting ideas out there in such a way that other people can see it and understand it. Because if you can't, then your idea dies on the vine. Right? So I think that's a key point about visual thinking and visual communication. And it crosses cultural and language barriers as well. So I use this a lot with my students. I tell the story in my TED Talk about how in China, I started drawing out what we needed on a piece of paper because we didn't speak Chinese, they didn't speak English, but through the drawing and gestures, we got the project done. So that was like my origin story of when I first used visual or became aware of using visuals as a way to communicate.
It's fantastic. You know, Glenn says, I'm so happy to learn something new with every show. So am I. And the thing that I was thinking as you were talking is you often hear from people that go, I'm more of a visual person. You know, I'm more visual.
Yeah.
And then suddenly that's juxtaposed with, as you call it, the ICD, you know, not OCD, right? But
Right.
ICD, I can't draw. But really, everyone can draw. It's just that some people draw really badly.
You're right. Yeah.
But how do you reconcile the fact that some people are visual and some people aren't visual? And if you are a leader, if you are a teacher, if you are a professor, an adjunct like you and I are, how do you find the common denominator that can work for everyone and bring everyone together?
Yeah, I mean, I could go on about this for hours. There's 4 learning modalities. They used to be called learning styles, and it's VARK, V-A-R-K, visual, auditory, reading and writing, and kinesthetic. So some people say, oh, I'm visual, I like a picture. Other people say I'm auditory, I like listening or hearing or speaking. Some people say I prefer to read and write things out, and other people are kinesthetic, and they say I like to learn by touch and movement and feel. We are all 4 of those things. So don't limit yourself or put constraints there and say, oh, I'm not visual or I'm not auditory. Our brains are equipped to handle all of those things. When you use them in combination, let's say you're teaching, as we're both of us are instructors at NYU. If I show a visual PowerPoint slide, I explain it, I have a few words to accompany it, and then I have my students do something with it. I just use all 4 of those learning modalities to engage them. So I think that's the key thing. Don't think, oh, I need to use one or the other. They're all 4. They're just different senses. And sometimes, like for every class, I have a Spotify playlist. So if I'm teaching time management, I have my time management playlist with songs like Time After Time and Time Is on My Side, and I have my visual leadership playlist. So if I'm teaching change management session 8, I have Bowie's Changes playing on a continuous loop to the point where you can't stand listening to it anymore. Changes, right? So it seeps in almost by osmosis, and it's the auditory combined with the visual that is more powerful than either one. It's actually called dual coding theory, without getting heavily into the science. When you leverage both sides of the brain, metaphorically, right brain and left brain, the words and the text with visual imagery and movement and art, that is the magic combination. So dual coding theory says that words and pictures are more effective than either words or pictures alone. But there's also a principle called the picture superiority effect, PSE, which means that when pictures and words or text are doing battle, the pictures always win. That's just how our brains are wired. So think about this. Would you read a blog post if there was no image attached to it? Would you buy something on eBay or Amazon if there was no picture of the product, just the title or description? There's a million examples. Would you link in with someone who sent you an invitation if they didn't have a headshot? So the power of visuals is just part of, if you're driving down a highway and you had a print ad up on a billboard instead of a visual image, at 80 miles an hour, you're not reading the text, you're seeing the picture in the fraction of a second. So it's all around us. I think it's just about being more attuned. Like I'm looking at your background, you have a Yorick skull behind you, you have a, pictures you have a, so it's like we're always looking at what's in your background subconsciously. But I would say Nelson Mandela, right? One of my favorite quotes of his is, it's not, I never lose, I either win or I learn. Right. So I use that all the time. So it's like, I know that you're from South Africa, you have Nelson Mandela. That's a point of connection and commonality that we could discuss. So it's like, be attuned to your environment. I think I see Batman up there as well. I'm a big Batman and Superman person. So that's what I would say. Look for things that other people don't see, and that will help to elevate you above the crowd.
Well, I tell you, if there really was forget about rim shots, but if there was a money shot, those last few minutes felt like it felt like a masterclass, and I'm still reeling with this new stimulus that I've been fed about playlists. Thinking, how can I be a better professor? Wait, are these playlists playing while you're teaching, or they're just?
No, they're playing when students walk into the room and during the break. So they set the theme, and unfortunately, baby boomer Gen X-itis is my music is not the same. So if I'm playing a lot of the songs that I once said something and there was no response, and I said, it sounds like Sound of Silence in here. Does everyone know that song? I said Simon and Garfunkel. There was like crickets. They thought Simon and Garfunkel was like a consulting firm or a law firm. There was no recognition there. Exactly right. That's what I was hearing. So but that's a good point about the metaphors we use and the stories we choose to tell, is they have to resonate with our audience. So if I'm telling a story, I use a lot of baseball analogies and metaphors. I'm a big baseball fan, Yankees and Mets. But if I'm talking to someone from South Africa, I might use soccer or rugby. Or if I'm talking to someone from India, maybe cricket or tennis, which is more universal. So think about the examples you use and the metaphors that you use, and are they resonating with someone? Because metaphors can help to bring clarity or confusion. And again, it's not only visual language, but visual imagery. So for example, I might say, Joseph, I'm really curious about something. Maybe you can answer my question. Or, Joseph, how flexible are you? Are you willing to bend over backwards to serve your clients? So I could go on. I have a million of these in terms of different ideas we can spark. And if we only have one tool, like a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So we have to have a variety of tools in our toolkit. So that's a sample of some of the visual props that you can use as well in your teaching.
Right, and if your jokes don't land, then you're
exactly right.
So isn't it interesting how you have been? I think we make a good team. You're going with all the visual, and I'm going with all the sound effects.
I love it. Auditory. My next book could be audio leadership. You never know.
I will tell you just a very quick story, and then it will be interesting to hear. Gregarious is our Monday correspondent talking about entrepreneurship. But, in my mind, I'm thinking about all the different ways of selling, from a selling standpoint, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, how visuals, can help as well. But you know what, let's do that. Actually, let's go to Gregarious and then see, and then we can both respond to him.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a great weekend. So let's just talk quickly about the different kinds of buyers when you're making a pitch, because remember that you're always pitching to someone. So it's important to remember that in every situation, there are 3 buyers that are always being activated, right? Number 1 is going to be the user buyer. That's the person who's actually going to be using your software, your product, your service, whatever that may be. The second person or buyer type is the executive buyer, which is the person who actually makes the decision about whether or not you're going to be able to buy that thing. And then the third one is the financial buyer, right? Which is the person who actually pays for that thing, right? So in large corporations, if you're selling, then you may have 3 separate people in this, but like say you're selling into a household, partner, mom or dad, maybe the user and the executive and the financial buyer all together. So when designing a pitch, one of the most important pieces to remember is know how many buyers there are and make sure that your pitch is tuned to the buyer that's in front of you. See you next week.
And of course, the thing that I'm thinking of is each buyer, each category of buyer, each constituency is going to interpret the stimulus or differently. Some
Yeah.
may be audio, some may be more visual, some might be a hybrid of both.
Yeah. As he was talking, I was thinking there's an exercise I do in one of my segments, not in my NYU class, one of my workshops on influencing. And I have a deck of cards with all these different inventions from different eras, like the washing machine and the bicycle and whatever. And the exercise is I have a panel of 3, quote, investors, and then people get two people get the invention card. So if I'm trying to pitch you to invest in the bicycle and someone else is trying to get you to invest in some other invention of that same era, let's say, I don't know, the sewing machine or the typewriter, they always pitch based on what the product does, not on the investment, the ROI of investing in it. So that's the biggest aha people get. So it's very similar. We tend to pitch to the end user, but even when you're talking to the executive, right, or the money person. So how you spin or orient your pitch needs to be targeted towards the person that you're trying to sell to. So I hadn't thought about that in a while because I haven't done that workshop in a couple of years, but that's a great example of that.
Well, I'll give you actually a very real example from my infamous past, my sketchy past. When I was at DMB&B, may they rest in peace, the agency on Madison Avenue, I remember working on Procter & Gamble's Vicks brands. And we were doing a focus group, and we were doing claims research. And one of the claims was this idea of, we'll give you the boost so that you can, so you can be fully charged for the next day or something like that. And people in the focus group, One Way Mirror, said, "Oh, that's interesting." And they were asked, like, "Well, what does that make you think of?" And they said, "It makes me think of a battery. It makes me think of this idea of being fully charged," or it was something like that. It wasn't that obvious, but they said, "I think of like a Duracell battery," which I think was actually could have been owned by the same company, by Procter & Gamble. And the clients kind of turned their nose up at that, and they're like, "Ooh, that's inanimate, and it's kind of cold, and it's a battery, and we don't really like that." And I said, "Don't you understand? It's a great thing. You've got your consumer who's immediately making this connection about something that has a positive effect or positive impact on their life, the idea of charging, being fully charged. This is something that we should play on." And they pushed back so much so that I actually walked out of the focus group. I said, "How can you expect me as a planning director to do my job if you're kind of just interpreting this based on what you think or see or feel it should be, as opposed to what your consumer is?"
Yeah, the consumer didn't give you the right answer. It's like maybe they have the right answer and we don't have, or they're seeing something that we don't see before. So that's a great point. We need to see things from multiple perspectives, and we very often don't do that.
Well, Bill Jensen is here, who has been a guest on the show, and he said, "Great to see 2 amazingly famous faces I know." So, my standing joke is he must have counted you twice.
Thanks, Bill. Bill's a good friend of mine. We attend the Leadership Forum at Silver Bay, New York conference for many, many years together.
And so, a friendly, familiar face. Well, speaking of friendly, familiar faces, I had to go and right the wrongs. What you really wanted amidst all of the incredible artwork and visual design is you wanted to see your face on Peewee Herman's body. So I was able to rectify that and give this to you. So there you go. There's the image as well. You look good with an undersized bow tie, my friend.
Thank you. I think I may need to, if I could still fit into it. I haven't put that suit on in many years, but I think I may need to wear that when I teach at NYU going forward. I think it gives me a certain kind of a professorial air that I also have my platform shoes that he wore. I hate to age myself from the Saturday Night Fever era, but I still have my platform shoes that add another 3 inches to my height.
Well, the book is called Visual Leadership. Now you know a little bit more, not just about this powerful, the vision in visionary, but you also know a little bit about the visual cover of the book, which no doubt is important, conveys a story, or maybe even a story behind the story. This has been guest number 314, Todd Cherches, who is the CEO of Big Blue Gumball and author, of course, of the book. Please go out and buy the book wherever books are sold. I fully intend to read this book. And the first thing I did, by the way, Todd, is I opened it up and I was like, I hope there are a lot of pictures in the book. It was important for me that there was, it goes back to my, the way that I got by on Shakespeare when I was at school. You can connect with Todd on LinkedIn, follow him on Twitter. And if you really want to know more about the power of visual thinking, just head on over to www.toddcherches.com. I suppose if you really want more Todd, you know, you can download his Spotify playlist or even, you know, sign up for one of his courses at NYU's SPS. Mr. Michael Diamond will be very happy that we gave it a bit of a punt, no doubt.
Yes. Thank you to Michael for connecting us.
Indeed. And I also have to thank Chuck Norris, who had this to say about you, Todd.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
And we will be back tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.